Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Growing Kentucky's Leaders. I'm your host, Sheldon McKinney, and today we've got some special guest hosts again. We have Madison Wright and Matthew Estes, two Kentucky FFA members and fellow podcasters with their show Rooted in Ag. They are joining me here today, and we're working on passing this mic to some FFA voices, and it's just a pleasure to have you guys back. So say hello.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us again.
Super excited to be here, and we're glad we can make it work out.
Yeah. And they are going to be talking to an awesome guest today. We have Coach Kiah. Kiah Twisselman Burchett is a California cattle rancher turned international motivational speaker on a mission to empower others to love themselves deeper, care for themselves better, and find joy. She and her husband, Brent, have a new baby girl. They live in Kentucky, and she's going to be a familiar face this summer as she is our keynote speaker of all 5 sessions of the Kentucky FFA Leadership Training Center. So, Kiah, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here.
Yeah, so I'm going to pass the mic to these guys, and I look forward to this great conversation.
Yeah, so Kiah, you grew up on a cattle ranch on the central coast of California. That's a really different lifestyle than we have here in Kentucky. So tell us about where you come from and how your path led to being in Kentucky.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny when I tell people I'm from California, I love to just watch their faces because I can see the wheels that are turning, right? They're picturing Hollywood, they're picturing LA traffic, they might picture vineyards, they're picturing the coast. And very rarely is the first image they have in their head a rural cattle ranch. And if you were to come to my family's ranch right now, you'd probably think that we were somewhere in Texas, honestly, by the landscape. And California has such a diverse landscape from the top to the bottom and just such a rich agriculture heritage. And it is one of the top ag states. And I think a lot of times we forget that. We forget that California is so much more than just the big cities that we often see or Hollywood, where we see all of our movies come out of. And that's the part of California that I am from. So I'm sixth generation from my family's cattle ranch. My nieces that are growing up there are now the seventh. And I grew up an hour from the nearest gas station, grocery store, high school. I had to take an hour bus ride one way to go to high school. And that's usually not what people think about when they think of California. But I am so grateful looking back thinking about my childhood, because when you think about it, especially in today's era, it's such a rare childhood to have grown up that way. And it's one that I truly, truly cherish, but it's one of those things that you only cherish looking back hindsight when it's all you knew growing up. But I really had this love of agriculture deeply rooted within me. And I continued that love through 4-H and FFA, of course. And I'll confess to y'all, I did not think I was going to stay in agriculture because as much as I loved cows, I loved people more. And I had a fairly narrow view of what careers in agriculture looked like, just coming from the lens of what I understood it to be. And I thought I was going to go off to school to become a nurse. And then I took a college chemistry class, and that dream really took a turn. I realized that was not going to be the path for me. But I actually went to an agricultural university, even though my major was not ag. I was actually a human development major with a minor in education. And I still found agriculture just bringing me back in. I got involved with collegiate FFA programs. I got involved with organizations through national FFA at the collegiate level. I had all of my extracurriculars were in animal science. And I just had that deep rooted agriculture love continue to pull me back in and really lead me to my career, which started in agricultural communications. After I moved to Germany for a year, my first, I would say, quote unquote, big kid job out of college was working for the Kentucky Beef Council. And I was so excited because it felt like this perfect blend between agriculture and my love of the beef industry that I grew up in and people, right? Being this bridge between our producers and our consumers. But I will confess, Madison, Matthew, the biggest culture shock coming to Kentucky was not, the accents, the food, the landscapes. The biggest culture shock to me, which is what I was not expecting, was the beef industry. I had no idea how drastically different the beef industry was out west compared to here in Kentucky. I think I'd been working there for a couple of months, and I was sitting at my desk and I was like, they must not like me here because nobody has invited me to a cattle branding yet. And I went upstairs to ask my accountant. I'm like, what's the deal? Like, no one's talked about this. They're like, honey, we don't do that here.
Yeah, it's not just you. Yeah, there's no branding. So
There's no branding. It was not personal. There's
right.
also, fewer people ride horseback when they gather cattle. The landscape here doesn't require it like it does in the rough country where I'm from. Fewer people wear cowboy hats. I think it's becoming a little bit more popular, but it's ball caps and side by sides. It's not cowboy hats and, horseback necessarily. And so the industry was just so drastically different. And of course it is, right? Y'all got that wet stuff that falls from the sky called rain that we don't have out west. And so it was just such a huge culture shock for me. And it allowed me to appreciate the beef industry more and just agriculture as a whole, getting to really immerse myself in agriculture in a state like Kentucky.
That's awesome. So you've built this brand for yourself and you've done so many things, podcasts, TV shows, series, and you're an influencer on social media. What inspired you to do all this and like what keeps you going?
Ooh, that's a great question. I will say this, Matthew, it happened by accident. I would say that a lot of things just naturally led into what I'm doing now. If you would have asked me just 5 years ago, like, oh, what are you going to be doing in 5 years? This probably would not have been it. Working at the Kentucky Beef Council, I was really able to hone these skills in marketing and communications, in media training, right? I got to be that girl on the Morning Lexington and Louisville News, whipping up Super Bowl beef recipes in 2.5 minutes live on TV. And I fell in love with that communications piece and really helping to be this voice to help amplify the stories of agriculture. I got to learn how to do influencer marketing by working with influencers on behalf of the Kentucky Beef Council and the Beef Checkoff. I got to work on advertising campaigns, and it really gave me all of these incredible skills that have served me so well in what I'm doing now. When I was working for the Beef Council, I loved that career so much, but I became desperately homesick. And I knew that I wanted to have a career shift that would allow me more time, flexibility, and freedom so that I could go home to see my family a little bit more. My oldest niece was born the week that I moved to Kentucky. And so I just felt like I was missing out on their childhoods. And I wanted to be able to hop on a plane anytime I wanted and go and visit them. And so while working in that 9 to 5, I started this side hustle in the evenings, and we called it Burley and Barley. My
Mhm.
husband, Brent, grew up on a burley tobacco farm in Western Kentucky. They also, now they just do row crops. But so burley was a nod to his agriculture background, and barley, we also raised barley on my family's cattle ranch. And it was a marketing and communications consulting business, essentially. So we started making logos for different agriculture businesses here in Kentucky and beyond. I started doing watercolor illustration by accident. Someone asked me, and I'm a yes girl. I said, sure, I can try that. I haven't done it since third grade, but let's give it a go. And it kind of became this specialty of mine. I did some social media consulting, and it just kind of continued to flow and flow and flow. And there was an opportunity that popped up in my home county working for the Farm Bureau, and I was getting recruited for it. And I did not feel qualified, but I knew a guy who was. And it
Yeah.
was my husband at the time. And let me tell y'all, it is hard to get a Kentucky boy to leave the South.
Yeah.
But by some miracle, he applied for the job, and we moved out west to California in my home county for 5 years, where he served as the executive director of our Farm Bureau. And it was at that point that I leaned into entrepreneurship full time, doing my consulting business. And at the same time, I started sharing more on my social media about the things that I was learning in my personal life. I was learning all of these tools about mindset and mental health and wellness and how that influenced my physical health and how I was taking better care of myself. And I was just this junkie for personal development. And I was just screaming it from the rooftops. And when I say rooftops, I mean Instagram, because I was so excited about the things that I was learning with zero intention of it leading anywhere. And long story short, my health journey had been picked up by media outlets the summer of 2020. Y'all remember that year, right? The world was shut down, and it was wild. And People magazine had picked up my story. It was on Good Morning America, Access Hollywood. And it just snowballed. And suddenly I woke up one morning and my Instagram went from 4,000 people to 17,000 people. So it really was a little bit of this overnight thing where I was like, "Oh my gosh, what do I do now? I didn't mean for this to happen." And it gave me this platform to really continue sharing and to also continue sharing my love of agriculture too. And so I discovered after going full time in my business that Coach Kiah, that brand, kind of became my side hustle to my main business. And I started doing some coaching on the side, doing some speaking on the side, not because I sought it out, but because people sought me out. They said, "We love what you're sharing. We'd love for you to speak from the stage about it." And it happened very organically. And I realized that Coach Kiah became the thing that I loved the most. So I put aside Burley and Barley and really leaned into that brand. And it's led me to what I do now, which is getting to travel all the way across the country, travel internationally, getting to speak on stages to a lot of agriculture groups, but also people outside of agriculture, which I really love. And just continued to allow me to find a different role in this industry. I think that when I grew up, I was like, if I don't raise cattle, what am I going to do in this industry? And then my world really opened in college to all of the vast opportunities there are within our industry. And where it's had me land now is maybe my place in this industry is empowering the people within it to live their best lives, to love themselves deeper, to find joy in this journey of life. And that wasn't an option that I'd ever considered when I was younger.
Yeah. Well, I've got to say, Kiah, I have followed you on social media for a long time. I've gotten to see this whole evolution, and it is so inspiring. You are so vulnerable on Instagram, and I'm going to say that's very brave. I love Instagram too, but often I'm like, I don't want. You get self-conscious about what you're posting, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
if you follow me for my work or me personally, and
Yeah.
I have a lot of conflicts about what to share. But seeing you share so authentically, I do think it inspires other people to be more authentic and to be vulnerable about um, their struggles, but also their triumphs. So it's inspiring.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Sheldon. I really appreciate that. I will say that it is vulnerable to share online. And there's some people who are just naturally more private. My husband, for example, unfortunately, he married an influencer. So sorry about that, bud. But um, what I've found is that every time that I have allowed myself to be vulnerable, I think that the barrier for vulnerability for so many of us is we are afraid if I say this out loud, if people knew this, they would judge me. It threatens this piece of connection that we need as human beings, right? We need other people, we need community. It is a foundational human core need.
Right.
And our fear is if they knew this, maybe they would judge me. Maybe they would think less of me. And
Mhm.
every time I have opened up and shared something vulnerable and private or something that maybe there's a stigma against, it has never been met with harsh judgment. It has always been met with, "Oh my gosh, me too. I'm so glad someone is talking about this." And so I have found that through vulnerability, it has actually created deeper, more meaningful connections instead of breaking those connections, which has been so refreshing and just created a safe space for other people to feel seen and heard and understood too.
Yeah, for sure.
Kiah, I just wanted to say that I think your testimony is beautiful, and I feel like I really connect with it too because in my early high school years, I was like, I don't raise cattle, I don't have horses, I've never lived on a farm, I just don't fit in. Like agriculture is not for me. And after freshman year, I was ready to give up. And throughout the years, I found out that agriculture communications and agriculture business need people, and I can be someone in that industry. And so I'm hoping to follow or to maybe sort of follow in your path and try out these different organizations. Matthew and I both love the Kentucky Beef Council. They've done so much for us. We're very thankful to sort of just go into those organizations and see what they can provide and create that life for myself just as you have. So I really love that.
Mhm.
Madison, you are absolutely right. I was over here like mentally snapping because I was like, I don't want to mess up the audio, but yes, 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 and yes. I love that you have realized that coming into agriculture without an agricultural background is such a superpower, right? Those of us that grew up in agriculture, we have a lot of blind spots that we're unaware of, and we need more people to bring their gifts, their talents, their passions into our industry to own their place and create their own legacy. And so I love that you have had that perspective for yourself. I hope that you never forget how valuable that is. And something else that I think is interesting is that even though I grew up in a multi-generational ag family, even I felt like an imposter within the agriculture industry. I remember growing up, my dad is one of 8 kids. And all of his siblings all were really into horses and rodeo. I come from a really big rodeo family. And when he was in high school, he had a sour horse. And he was like, that's it. I don't want to ride anything that has a mind of its own. I am done with the horses thing. And so he became a mechanic. And he became the guy who fixed all of the equipment on the ranch. He fixed all of the vehicles. And he was just not a horse person. So growing up, us as kids, we didn't have horses. While all of our cousins did rodeo, we rode dirt bikes and four wheelers and side by sides. And when we were gathering cattle with our family, we were doing so on a motored vehicle, not on a horse. And I remember having this feeling growing up of, oh my gosh, I'm not Twisselman enough. That's my maiden name. I felt like I wasn't even cowboy enough to be in my own family. Like I felt so insecure that I could not confidently saddle a horse. And so when I hear a lot of people who say, I'm not from this industry and I feel like I don't belong here, I'm a fraud. Even people within our industry feel that way too. I think it's just kind of this human experience that all of us kind of feel like a fraud sometimes. And my grandfather, whose cattle brand I actually have tattooed right here on my wrist, he gave me the greatest gift. And this was just a year before he passed. He told me once, I was actually interviewing him for a TV show series that we were doing. And I asked him, I said, Grandpa, where do I fit? Like I was living in Kentucky. I knew that like my dreams and passions took me so far away from the ranch, took me all around the world. And I had this conflict of how do I continue my family's legacy if I'm not here, if I'm not on my family's ranch that I grew up on? And he told me that agriculture gave me these firm roots. My family gave me these firm roots. And he said, these roots don't mean that you have to stay here. These roots are what give you the foundation for you to grow in your own way. And he said, maybe your legacy in agriculture isn't here on the ranch. Maybe your legacy is in telling stories, in continuing to romanticize this Western experience of actually going out and elevating the voices. That's a gift that you have that nobody else in our family does. And that's how you continue our legacy. And it was the greatest gift because it was almost like this permission I didn't know that I felt like I needed to really embrace that I could really create a legacy in my own way, even if it looked entirely different from how I was raised or where I was from. And so, Madison, Matthew, everyone that's listening, I want you to really think about how can I create a legacy by owning my own passions, my own strengths, my own gifts, even if it looks completely different than how my family did it or completely different from the people around me. I think that's the greatest gift you can give agriculture. I think it's the greatest gift you can give this world is by owning your own unique passions and strengths. And so I can't wait to see how you both do that.
That's great. Yeah. Well, we want to ask you, you mentioned your series, Backroad Cowgirls.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about it. What was that and how did you make it happen?
Backroad Cowgirls was born during a long layover in Dallas, Texas. I was just flying back from a speaking engagement in Kansas, and I had a long layover in Dallas. And one of my very good friends, Courtney Dehoff, which maybe some FFA students are aware of, she spoke at National FFA Convention just a few years ago. She lived in Dallas, so she picked me up and took me to lunch because if I'm going to be stuck for 7 hours, I might as well go and have a delicious lunch, maybe with some wine. And we were sitting there, we were talking about our dreams and our passions, and we both do similar lines of work in that we both do a lot of public speaking. And as we were sitting there, we were just like, oh my gosh, it'd be so fun to have our own TV show one day. Wouldn't that be so cool? And at the time, I was trying to convince my husband delusionally that we should buy a camper van and travel the country. Listen, man likes his long hot showers. I was silly forever thinking he would agree to that. But Courtney said, I would love to live in a camper van and travel the country. And so we were both talking about this and just getting really excited. And I said, well, why don't we do it? Why don't we create our own TV show? Literally anyone can have a TV show. YouTube is free. What's stopping us from doing it? And so right then during that 7 hour layover, we had come up with the name Backroad Cowgirls. We had come up with the concept, and a month and a half later, we had funded enough money to rent a camper van. I mean, it was a janky camper van that I got from somebody on Instagram, but we rented a camper van and we were traveling the state of California for 2 weeks with our friend who was a photographer. And we decided we were going to produce our own TV show, and we called it Backroad Cowgirls. And so we created these series. It was a series on YouTube. You can go and look it up now. There are 16 episodes, which are really highlighting the diverse agriculture and, more importantly, the people within agriculture across the state of California. And it was the time of our lives. And that was the number one rule when we decided we were going to do this project. We are only going to do it if we're having a lot of fun. And if it's not fun anymore, we're going to stop doing it. And so we went on this road trip, and at the time, people were loving following along on that adventure. We were sharing about it on social media, and a company, Simplot Grower Solutions, saw it and they said, this is amazing. How can we get involved? So Simplot actually gave us the full funding for us to shoot an official pilot episode. So we produced this pilot episode a little over a year ago, and it is now complete, and it is currently in the sales channels. And we are keeping our fingers and toes crossed that hopefully one day you'll get to see it on a network television show or a streaming platform. And this is what I'll say. It might not ever happen. it might not get picked up. It might have just been a project that brought us so much joy and passion. And even if that was all that happened, it was absolutely worth it. And also, maybe the fact that we believed in our dreams could lead to such beautiful opportunities in the future. So, we're at a point right now where you can go and check us out on YouTube. And hopefully, one day, fingers and toes crossed, you'll also get to see us on a screen somewhere in your living room.
Mm.
I love that go getter mentality that you have. Like you said, in 7 hours, you had this all planned out, mapped out. You found the camper on Instagram, and y'all just went and did it. What what do you think that go getter mentality come came from, and like how do you continue to do that today?
This is what I'm going to say. I I don't know if the kids say this anymore, so you guys can laugh at me if they don't say it anymore, but I saw it once online. They said Delulu is the solulu, like being a little delusional is the solution. Have you heard this before? Does anybody say that? Maybe not. Well, you've heard it, Matthew. Okay, thank you for nodding. Okay, he's like, she is so old. That is so last year. But I do think that being a little bit delusional is actually a great approach when it comes to chasing your dreams. We have so many voices in our head that are filled with self-doubt. So many voices in our head that kill our ideas and dreams before they're ever even able to be spoken out of our lips. And those voices aren't always even our own. Maybe they're voices that somebody else told us that we've kept in the back of our head. Someone being like, you can't do that. You don't even have the skills to do that. Or what makes you think that you can go and do that? You're not from there. Like, who are you to believe that that's possible? And a lot of times we have these voices in our head that aren't even our own that squash our dreams. And what I would say to you instead is, why not you? Why
Yeah.
not you? It's so easy for us to assume that the people that are doing the things that we would love to do have resources that we don't, that they have opportunities that we don't have, that they have skills that we don't have. And sure, sometimes they might have resources that we don't, but most of the time when you see people that are successful, it is just because they had the audacity to show up, to fail, to learn, and to keep standing back up and moving forward. And so if you see someone doing something that you want to do and you find yourself feeling a little envious of it, I'm a firm believer that all emotions are good emotions. All emotions serve us in some way. And envy is actually a really helpful emotion because if you envy something that somebody else have, it is just a signal to you of like, ooh, I think that I might want that. And so instead of having that envy turn into this like yucky jealous feeling in our bodies, how can we say, ooh, I envy that. Ooh, this is a signal to me. What is it about that sounds exciting to me? What is it about that I want to create in my own life? And how can that inform me and the decisions and choices that I make moving forward? And so, yeah, being a little delusional is sometimes the strategy, Matthew. That's what I'll say.
I
I
love it.
love it. I love it. Um, Kind of changing subjects a little bit, but I'm gonna go along with the envy thing. You've lived in California and Kentucky back and forth. What do you envy when you're in California about Kentucky, and what do you envy about California or Kentucky when you're in California? I
Okay.
think I
Ooh,
said
this
that
is
right.
this is so good. Okay, when I lived in California, the thing that I envied about Kentucky is I love the seasonality of Kentucky. Like Kentucky has four distinct, beautiful seasons. I did not see my first lightning bug or firefly or whatever you want to call it until I lived in Kentucky. It was literally just something that I'd ever seen on the movies. It was a bucket list item for me. And getting to put the fireflies, the lightning bugs in a jar was like such a just a highlight of my life, honestly. So definitely envy the lightning bugs. Usually I would not say that I envy bugs at all. I will say I do not like all the other bugs that come with it though. Um, Kentucky can keep all the other bugs to itself. Okay. The things that I envy about California when I'm here are, I mean, my family, of course. I did not grow up appreciating the ocean as much as I do now, having lived so far away from it. It's one of those things where you have to like fly the nest and leave home to appreciate how much you love it. And now when I moved back to the Central Coast this last time, and now when I go back to visit, I just like savor it so much deeper than I ever did when I lived there. And that's one reason why I think it's really important that if you can, to leave home, at least just for a little while, even if it's for like a short internship somewhere, or maybe for your first job, or whatever the thing is. If you love home, you will never love it more than once you leave it and come back. It's funny though, when my husband lived there, where I'm from on the Central Coast, we lived in San Luis Obispo. And San Luis Obispo, obviously I'm biased, but it's the best part of the state. Okay. Highly recommend to visit. And It is like very mild weather all year long. It's really close to the coast. It's like 10 minutes from the beach, and it's like sunny and 75 most of the time. And you'd think that's amazing, right? Obviously. But my husband, who's from Kentucky, he said, the weather here is like ice cream. And I said, what on earth are you talking about? He said, ice cream is great. I love ice cream. But if I eat it every single day, it loses the excitement. He said, sunny and 75, amazing. But when I get it every day, it loses the excitement. The first year we lived there, you should have seen this man the first time it rained. He was standing in a parking lot, like with his arms open, like he was in the Notebook, just like in love with the rain that was falling from the sky because it's so rare.
Yeah, that's great. I got to go to California and take my family on our fall break last year for the very first time. And we went from Yosemite to the coast. And I have just a whole new appreciation for California. I think any place you go to, if you haven't been, you really don't get it. But the climate is so different. In that 4 hour drive, it's like a different country. It's totally different. And I totally see that about the seasons. I don't think I could live without seasons. I love it
Yeah.
so much.
I do
Yeah.
too. You know
Mm.
what's interesting, Sheldon, is when I was working for the Kentucky Cattlemen's Association, they host a tour every year to another state or region just to learn about their beef industry and the cattle industry. And one of the years that I was there, they picked California. So obviously, I was recruited to help do a lot of that planning. And I remember we had I think like 55 to 60 different cattlemen and cattlewomen from Kentucky that went on that trip. And one of my dear friends, his mom and dad came on the trip, and they're actually from Owensboro area. And he came up to me and he says, Kiah, I have a confession to make. And I say, okay, what is it? And he says, I thought I was going to hate this place. I thought I was going to hate California and everything about it and everything in it because let's be honest, it gets a bad rap, especially when it comes to agriculture. He said, you know what I realized? He said, farmers and ranchers here in California are just like farmers in Kentucky. They just have to deal with a lot of other hard issues that we don't have to worry about. And I said, that is absolutely right. And
Yeah.
I do think that for anybody, especially if you're in agriculture, if you have this like bad taste in your mouth for California, first of all, I understand. And also go and visit. Go and visit and meet the people because there is so much more that you have in common than you have different. And I think my husband, having gone from working for he worked for the Kentucky Soybean Board in the past, the Kentucky Department of Agriculture in their specialty plant division, and then working for our local county farm bureau. Our top commodities in our county are wine grapes, strawberries, avocados, vegetables, and cattle. And so when he got that job, he said, great, I have to start from scratch. I know nothing about California agriculture when we moved to that area. And he just has such a more rich and deep appreciation for California agriculture and the farmers and ranchers within it, and also the unique challenges that they face that we just don't have to navigate here in Kentucky. And it's very refreshing now when we go places and I tell someone I'm from California and they do that little eye roll thing. I'm not the only one that has to jump in and defend California. My husband is now the one that says, actually, what you should know about California agriculture
Yeah.
is.
That's great. Yeah. And it's just our biases, once you are
Absolutely.
close to somebody, types of people, places, it changes how you feel instead of just hearing about it.
And I will say what I love too about I call myself a Kentuckifornian. I embrace both as my home.
Okay.
Is that I love that I get to also be that person for Kentucky when I'm in California or traveling the world, that I get to, I had never been to Kentucky before I moved here. It was definitely like a blind whim. I'm like, great, Kentucky sounds good. And I moved here, like very bold. And I love it so much. Kentucky truly is home to me. And there's also a lot of stereotypes that people have about Kentucky in this part of the world. And I love that I can give a lens to Kentucky. And I just love it here. And the people are just the best. And I will say this, y'all, I'm going to be so angry if my daughter does not have a Southern accent.
Well,
Oh, that's great. I've absolutely just adored everything you've said. I feel like I've connected with the part about envy and really honing in on your own personal skills. I think that's going to be valuable to all of the listeners because in every stage of life, you have to connect to yourself if you want to move forward. So those that are applying for chapter office or regional office or state office, or they're graduating high school and going to an internship or college, I think that's really valuable information. And I am I don't know if I'm more excited for you or for the FFA members that you're going to get to speak to them at the Kentucky FFA Leadership Training Center for 5 weeks. That is so exciting. So, what advice could you give those FFA members that are attending FFA camp so that they get the most um, experience and content out of their time at camp?
Great question. Okay, I know that it can be really, really hard, especially when we live in a digital age where we have these phones that are connected to us all the time. And I'm not going to tell you to not bring your phone, right? I want you to take pictures. I want you to take videos. I want you to talk about it. I want you to take notes. But I want to just encourage those that attend conference, that attend camp this summer to just really focus on being present, like really be where your feet are planted. And if that means having to disconnect a little bit, great. If it also means, this is the other thing. I know that when you come to camp, there's probably still things back home that are on your brain, right? Maybe you have livestock that you need help with. Maybe you are a crucial person on your family's operation. You feel like, oh gosh, are things going okay while I'm gone? Really be where your feet are planted. Really focus on being present while you're there and soaking up the experience. And the other thing I'll say is this. Yes, listen to the presenters. Yes, soak in the sessions. I hope that you take something away from my session. I hope you're going to love it. But I will say that one of the most important things for me from my time in FFA and collegiate FFA and, collegiate programs and just in my professional career is that the educational pieces are important, but the network is the most important thing. So while you are there, talk to people, make new friends, make those connections. Networking is not something that is reserved for like adults that are in their careers. It starts now in high school. And what has been so, so fun in my career from high school to now is that the people that I see at different conferences I go to now, they were people that I went to high school with. They're people that I went to college with. And so the network that you're strengthening at this stage of your life is going to serve you so well as you continue in your career and in your life moving forward. I think one of the most valuable assets that I really gained in FFA and all of the leadership programs I was involved in were the people within them. So spend time with the people, have fun, build those networks.
I
Yeah.
love what you said there. You seem really in touch with what FFA members are going to struggle with and then what they want to do, make friends, network, and then struggling with being in the moment, either it's phones or something going on back home. And so I think you're going to be a true blessing for the 5 weeks that you're at FFA camp. So thank you for wanting to be there and helping us grow better members.
Mm.
Well, thank
Yeah.
you. I'm so excited.
Well, Kiah, we always end the show with the same three questions to our guests, and I'm gonna run through those. They're quick, easy stuff, but the first is just what keeps you motivated as a leader?
Mm, I think the thing that keeps me motivated as a leader is the next generation of leaders, honestly, and I felt this way even before I became a mom, but now with a new baby girl, I feel like I'm more focused on the future than ever. And not just my future, but the future and the legacy that we're going to leave to like my daughter, to the next generation of leaders. And if I can take something that I've learned and help somebody learn it a little bit faster or not have to learn it quite as, as much the hard way, then I would love to be able to give that back to them. I think that's a big thing that keeps me motivated. And also just the deep, rich conversations that I have with people, and the connections that I make, and knowing that the more that I show up and lean into my own authenticity and be vulnerable, the more I can create safe spaces for other people to feel the same. Oh, that is what lights me up and keeps me going.
Yeah, you're doing that for sure.
Thank you,
You are
Sheldon.
you are creating those spaces. Okay, so philanthropy, Kentucky FFA, our foundation, we're philanthropy. It's all about giving back. You can do that in time, talent, treasure, so many ways. What has been the most meaningful way you personally have gotten to engage in philanthropy?
I love this question so much because, and I love that you think about philanthropy so, philanthropy is not just being Bill and Melinda Gates and having a ton of money. I aspire to be able to be
Sure.
wildly philanthropic with my money that I don't have yet. But one day, maybe, right? We're being audacious and a little bit, delusional here. One day I'm going to have millions to give away. But for now, one of the greatest gifts that I have is my experience and my time. And when I think about the most meaningful philanthropy, for me, it really started in FFA programs, right? Really giving you this view of leadership, that it's about giving back. It's about being a voice. And I remember we did a lot of philanthropy in my FFA program, working with local elementary schools and introducing them to agriculture. And that love and philanthropy there really led into, when I was in college, we did a lot of agriculture education programs with the youth. And I think that that has been the most enriching thing for me, because if we can give back and plant the seed of curiosity and appreciation in a young student at a young age, just by sharing our stories and exposing them to it, that is going to just make an impact and ripple effects far beyond what we'll ever be able to see. And so I think that some of the most meaningful philanthropy that I've been involved in really started with FFA programs.
Madison, tell her what you're doing right now while we're recording.
Yeah, so if you've seen me looking off or distracted, I'm actually at an elementary ag day with my executive team, and we have a station over here to my left, and there's a couple horses. The kids are getting to visit with the horses, and then the horses are actually going to write letters to the kids, and then the kids then get to go on the farm. So it's like an out of the classroom experience.
Oh my gosh,
There's
I
some
love
cattle
that.
down here. There's some sheep on the other side. We have some Kentucky Farm Bureau members here. We have a local Farm Bureau member here. The kids are running around in Kentucky Beef Council hats. It's a great day, and I'm just so excited to be here at our
Oh, I
elementary
love
ag day.
that. That makes my heart so happy.
Yeah.
It's good. So it keeps on growing. And our last question, this answer can truly be anything, but what is something that you cannot stop talking about right now?
Okay, I'm going to say two things.
Okay.
One of the things that I cannot stop talking about is joy. And I am just obsessed with this idea of really helping people find joy in the journey, whatever journey it is that they're on. I am someone who, starting in high school, I was a bit of an overachiever. And for me, that led to a lot of success and opportunities, but it also led to a lot of burnout. And I had a nasty habit of being so focused on getting to the end of the finish line that I didn't spend as much time really enjoying the journey. So I'm obsessed with talking about joy, and I'm going to be talking to y'all more about that this summer. But the other thing that I'm obsessed with is rest. And maybe it's because I'm a new mom and it's hard to come by these days, but I was very much engaged and immersed in hustle culture for a lot of my life, a lot also, leading into burnout. And so I am so obsessed with this idea of rest and really honing in on the value of rest and how inspiration can come from rest and how we can be more productive when we rest, instead of making it think of like, okay, well, I have this long to-do list and I got to keep going and going and going.
Yeah.
Like, no, you need some rest. And I've been obsessed with that lately.
That's great. I want to be more obsessed with that. You're right, though. I think sometimes, especially if you're a high achiever, it's all those things of just going to the next thing without stopping to celebrate your success, to celebrate, like, does this even feel good to me? What
Yes,
is, once you can kind of hone in on, like, why am I doing this? And
yep,
is it serving me well? And where do I find joy? Man, it unlocks a next level of your leadership and your purpose.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Kiah, I have loved our conversation today, and I'm so excited for over 1,000 Kentucky FFA members to get to interact with you this summer at our most beloved place ever, is the FFA camp in Hardinsburg, Kentucky. So, Matthew, Madison, you all have anything to close us out?
Not
I don't think
really.
so.
No, just thank you for your time, and I hope I'm in one way or another am able to hear your message at Kentucky FFA camp this year.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. And guys, Kiah will tag all these things you talked about in our show notes. All the places people can find you on social media. But I hope people follow you, and I hope just thanks for sharing your story, being who you are.
Well, thank you so much. It's been such a joy, and I cannot wait to meet all of you this summer at camp. It's going to be such a fun time.
Yeah. Thank you all for listening to this episode of Growing Kentucky's Leaders. Growing Kentucky's Leaders is a podcast brought to you by the Kentucky FFA Foundation. Our music is performed by Bourbon County FFA member Joe Fritch. Artwork is by Julie Fritch Creative. Your hosts are Sheldon McKinney and Ruth Ann Fink, and you can find us on all social platforms at Kentucky FFA.